Hello and welcome everyone for another Trackmania tutorial. Today I'll be sharing with you my top 10 tips on how to become faster in Trackmania. Before I get started, I just wanted you to know that recently I started working on a new Trackmania movie, and if you haven't heard about that, I'll provide a link down in the description. So let's get started. First tip I have is airtime. Airtime reduction is one of the most important things in Trackmania, because the more time you spend in the air, the less time you are accelerating, which is not what we want. And to minimize airtime, you want to try and go diagonally on downhills and blocks such as the sausage block. So I'll give you an example. Normally, you would drive the track like this, and you would just start as if you did it right. However, then when you come to something like the author medal, you'd be surprised that you did not achieve it even though you drove it correctly. Well, to take high medals like the author medal, you would need to use some airtime reduction tricks, such as driving diagonally. As you can see, we are already ahead, and we did not even do anything like the air brake, which will come up later in this video. So that's tip number one. Downhills, just drive downhill. Do not just drive the turn straight, you drive it diagonally. This will reduce airtime and give you a lot of speed. Okay. Tip number two. Air brake. And I just mentioned that in this section, which is the air brake. The air brake is probably the most simple trick to do in Trackmania. All what you have to do when you're in the air, just tap the brake. And here is a big example. If I drive it just pressing forward, as you can see, the landing is very harsh and the car is not stable. This leads to speed loss, which is something we do not want. To improve, just tap the brake. And now we have a better landing and we're already like a few hundredths ahead. Tip number three. It's racing lines. Racing lines are very important for you to understand this game. So if you think about it, here we have a very simple turn. Technically, there are a lot of ways you can drive it. You can drive it with something like this, and that's valid. Or you can drive it with something like this. Of course, you do not crash, but like if done correctly, you'll be ahead by probably a few tenths sometimes. So the idea is you want to start off, if you're going super fast, you want to start off on the outside line and then go and hit the middle of the turn and go onto the outside. This is called the ideal racing line. This will provide the fastest speed through the entry and exit of a corner. I'll demonstrate this again. I'll put a booster block, and so to make the turn correctly, you want to hit that middle and go. Sometimes at low speeds, as you saw, you don't have to fully exit on the outside. You can exit it on the inside if you're on low speed. But usually you want to be as wide as possible, go in, hit the middle, and come out the other end. This is one of the most important stuff to understand, because what we're trying to do is minimize distance but increase speed. Next tip is drifting. Drifting is another one of those things that are extremely common. You'll have to experience it lots and lots of times, especially in the campaigns, like the fall 2025 campaign. It has a lot of drifting tracks that are difficult if you don't know how to drift. So, to drift. So, usually, if you're facing something like this, you just go like that. And I mean, in this case, yes, but look, sometimes it can lead to crashes if you don't act fast. So what we do is drift. To initiate a drift, you must press the acceleration button, then the turn, and then press the brake. You can hold the brake for as much as you want. And the more you hold it, the sharper the drift will be. As you can see here. This turn doesn't require a lot, it only requires like a gentle tap, and it will be fine. But sometimes turns can force you to take very, very sharp ones. I'll give you an example here. There we go. Okay. Let me show you how to take that turn. Also, the racing line tip really applies here. As you can see, I cannot take that turn unless I release the acceleration. However, with a drift, you can pretty much take it at full speed. When done correctly, you will not crash, you'll have the best racing line, and you'll have more speed by the exit. Also, drifts are the kind of skill that you need to practice a lot. Each turn is different, but the principle of holding acceleration, steering, and holding the brake, it applies to any sharp turn that requires a drift. So my next tip for you is speed sliding. Speed sliding is one of the oldest tricks in Trackmania. And what it means is the following. So there's this bug in Trackmania where if you start sliding while going extremely fast, you'll experience faster acceleration. You can initiate a speed slide by pretty much like driving, for example, on empty block, or just tapping the brake. Those skid marks that appear on the car is what we want, and usually you want them to overlap. Maintaining a speed slide can be difficult, and it's one of the most advanced techniques in the game. However, with enough skill, with full speed maps, it's very, very essential, because you can gain, over the long term, you can probably gain like a tenth of a second. So my next tip is ice sliding. This is a skill that annoys a lot of players. It's because speed sliding it's a very hard technique. However, when you practice it enough, you'll start gaining a lot of speed and control with it. So here I have an ice section. So usually you'd be like, oh my god, I'm sliding out. How do I maintain my turn? So the trick is simple. So you stay on the outside and you counter steer. So you go probably on the outside line, you steer and counter steer. To maintain the ice slide, you can press the brake, which will make the turn sharper. Some maps you will not have to do that because the turn is very smooth. However, in this example, you will need to hit the brake a couple of times for you to actually make that turn out the fastest way possible. Also, another quick tip, and it's gonna pop up soon. you don't want to have the car gearing up or gearing down when you're ice sliding, because that will cause a slide out, and I'll try demonstrating that. My car slided out because the gear was trying to change. Also, another tip for ice sliding, sometimes you want to try and hit the sharpest angles possible to actually make a turn. Especially it depends on each of the exits, because in this example the exit is very smooth, it's just a straight line. Sometimes you can have like a turn, another turn coming ahead, so you'll have to adjust extremely quickly. So it takes knowledge of how to do the map as well, not only how to do the skill. And another tip, number 7, is the bobsleigh. The bobsleigh is a very common block across maps. It's basically the fast version of driving on ice. In a bobsleigh, you might be thinking, why don't I just ice slide here? It's just, you can make it, and yes, I mean, you are right, you can ice slide it. However, it's not fast. That's why with bobsleigh, we go like this. And we're already going up over 400 speeds. However, with ice sliding, as you can see, we pretty much gained nothing. And also we lost control. So with bobsleigh, the tip here, you want to stay between those 2 red lines. Those 2 red lines are the key. They're pretty much your road. If you go above them, or like if you go under them, you can actually start losing some speed. Also, you don't want the car to wobble, because that's another thing for speed reduction. So the key here is to plan out how the car will enter the turn. The entry is the most important part of bobsleigh. As you can see, my entry was bad, and now my car is pretty much out of control. To keep it in control, you want to head into the turn and try to be, as I said, in between those red lines. And that did not work out. It's more of a practice thing, because each track has different turns. Like for example, this one is a relatively wide turn. Sometimes you can have tighter turns and you have to make them with the same amount of speed. Which means, in that case, you would have to enter above the red line, and then the car will automatically go inside the red lines, just because the physics of the game will force it to. However, if you can go straight into between the red lines, then it's way better, it's way faster. Also, on some turns, you're required to use action keys. Action keys are normally used for bobsleigh, because when you're entering the turn, you don't want to slide too much on ice. So action keys are used to actually turn while turning. It might sound weird, but it's a thing that the car will accelerate more if you actually steer while you're in the bobsleigh. So, bobsleigh done. Next tip is gears. I don't have an example for gears, however I will explain them. What gears are? Trackmania has 5 sets of gears. You've got gear 1, gear 2, up to gear 5. Each one of them will have a certain speed that the car will change automatically to the faster gear. When that happens, you do not want to be turning. Turning while the car gears up will slow you down, because the car will take longer to gear up. Also, gearing down in a turn will also lose speed. So in some campaign maps, developers and mappers try to make the turns specifically to make you lose on gears, and this is one of the most common mistakes people make, because gearing on turns always slows them down and leaves them in a confusion that why did they slow down. So, tip number 9, sorry, bug sliding. The bug slide is a very common trick. It does not show up in campaign maps a lot. However, there was one time where it did show up, and it was very important for correct execution. The bug slide is not very hard, however, it's important to know, and it doesn't show up quite often. What the bug slide is, it's a bug that happens in Trackmania when the car is turning at extremely fast velocities. As you can see, my car just did a very sharp turn with very, very high speeds. And so that's what the bug is. It's basically making the car turn at very high speeds. And you can actually gain speed from the bug slide. So usually what a beginner would do, they would drive here, they would release acceleration because they think they will not make the turn, and then they will exit. This is not wrong, however, if this was something like a campaign map or track of the day, you'll not achieve high medals, because what the author would do, they would do the bug slide. To execute a bug slide, you'd need to hold acceleration, make the car sideways and hit the brake. Hold the brake until the turn is done. That's what you'll have to do. And usually, it works a lot of times. It's very consistent. That's why a lot of mappers sometimes like putting it inside the map, because it's very simple. And I'm sure any of you are capable of executing this. So remember, it's accelerate, make the car sideways and hold the brake before the landing. And then you'll execute a very clean bug slide. My final tip for you is watch world records. Watching the world records can sometimes make you feel bad. However, remember, use it as a teacher. Because when you drive world record style, or when you watch it, you can learn some new tricks about certain maps, and those would definitely help you in improving. Me, as an example, I watch the world records for all campaign tracks before I start playing them, because I know the world records would give me a good idea on how to actually drive the track properly without messing up. It teaches you a lot of stuff that would definitely help you in your Trackmania career. So now I am done for today. Those are my 10 tips. If you liked the video, hit that like button and subscribe to give me some support. Also remember, I'm gonna release soon a Trackmania movie. If you haven't checked that out, link will be in the description. And see you next time. Bye.